Even I was fooled. So Trudeau did not actually resign. What actually happened is he said he might resign after the election of the new Liberal Party leader. So there's a lot of things that have happened that have actually shined the light on Canada and shown once again how it is not a functioning democracy and the will of the people is definitely not being respected. So let's get into what is going on here. And you might think I'm being hyperbolic, but that's not the case, as we're going to go through here. So Parliament is prorogued. Here's what that means. So it's been used before, and it's been used by multiple different parties. So this isn't just something which Trudeau has done, like the use of the Emergencies Act, where he essentially turned the country into a literal dictatorship whilst that was enacted. He confirmed Parliament will be prorogued or suspended until March 24th, which is devastating actually for the Canadian economy, which we'll get into. Trudeau said Governor General Mary Simon granted the request to prorogue Parliament until March 24th. So who is Mary Simon and who put her in place? Because believe it or not, she is actually at the top of the chain in terms of power in Canada, but you did not vote her in. No. She is actually a member of the British aristocracy and the monarchy that is still left over in Canada. And basically it shows how Canada is not really a democracy when you've got Trudeau going to an unelected official to ask if he can prorogue Parliament, prevent a general election from happening and hurt the country. And basically that person doesn't even respect the will of the people, which is really obvious at this point, obviously. So the Governor General of Canada is the federal representative of the Canadian monarch, currently King Charles III. The King or Queen of Canada is also monarch and head of state of 14 other Commonwealth realms and lives in the United Kingdom. The monarch, on the advice of his or her Canadian Prime Minister, appoints a Governor General to administer the government of Canada in the monarch's name. The commission is for an indefinite period known as serving at His Majesty's pleasure, though 5 years is the usual length of term. And you know, this brings more questions because obviously you've got the Senate in Canada and you've also got the House of Lords in the UK, and they're practically the same thing. They're unelected officials that are put there, and obviously they do actually prevent legislation from happening, pass vital legislation through, but they're unelected once again. So you're once again like showing how Canada just really isn't a functioning democracy. It's just really that people like to believe that it's a functioning democracy. I mean, I'm sure that a lot of people will think I'm being hyperbolic when I'm talking about it in this way, but when you actually look into the fine details of what's going on and how these people get into positions of power, you begin to realize that this is really embedded within the power structures. And this is the thing that I talk about time and time again. You can change that face of the government and put the Conservatives in charge, but there is still a power structure that surrounds that government that is unelected and will continue on. And that's the thing. I mean, it's the same with the Senate. People are put forward into the Senate based off the Prime Minister. So it's interesting. So it says here in the CBC article, what is prorogation? Prorogation effectively allows the Prime Minister to hit pause on Parliament. The government remains in power, but all parliamentary activity from existing bills and committee work to studies and investigations comes to a halt. The legislative agenda will be reset once the House of Commons reconvene in March. Opposition parties have the option to revive the old activity with a motion, but there's no guarantee that that ever happens if they want to defeat the current government altogether. If the government falls, some key pieces of legislation could be abandoned, like the proposed change to Canada's capital gains or the Online Harms Act. So again, they're going against the will of the people here to get this stuff through. This is not a democracy. And that's what I want to outline here. And I would fully support Canada becoming a republic, an independent republic, instead of still being influenced by the monarchy and the Commonwealth, which is still there. Even though I'm from the UK, I still believe that that structure has an influence over the way things are going. And if you also look at that structure and how it's interacted with organizations like the World Economic Forum, it becomes blatantly obvious how these agendas are getting pushed behind the scenes, which most people just really don't realize. And this goes for Australia, and it also goes for the UK, and it's also New Zealand, who have this structure. It's exactly the same thing. So does the government still have power when Parliament is prorogued? Yes, the Prime Minister, Cabinet Ministers, and other executive staff are still in their roles. Unless it requires new laws or new spending, they can continue business, though they will be perceived as politically weak when it comes to negotiating with a counterpart like US President-elect Donald Trump. Obviously, Donald Trump is threatening tariffs and all these big things, and he's coming into power, and they basically shut down the government. I mean, it's just outrageous, but the main thing here is they've done it against the will of the people. It's so obvious because Trudeau is way down in the polls. His government is falling apart. Chrystia Freeland, who was just an epic fail of a finance minister, just stepped down recently. And it is just absolutely political chaos in Canada right now, and economic chaos. And it's all supported from NGOs, essentially, which is just, it's crazy to really think about, but it is literally what it is. So why prorogue Parliament? In this case, it means Liberals will avoid a confidence vote and get more time to run a leadership race. Trudeau said confidence votes that come after March 24th will allow Parliament to weigh in on a confidence in a way that is entirely in keeping with all principles of democracy, whilst he's essentially gone completely against democracy, contradicted himself time and time again. You know, he used that Emergencies Act. He turned the country into a dictatorship. He froze bank accounts. And just to remind you, the Conservative on the other side of the aisle, he flip-flopped on the truckers. So if you got much faith in him, I wouldn't have. Calls for Trudeau's resignation intensified after Chrystia Freeland, one of his most loyal allies, suddenly resigned as Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister on December 16th. So why has prorogation been controversial? Trudeau previously suspended Parliament in September 2020 during the pandemic, and controversially over the WE Charity Student Volunteer Grant Program. And if you look at the history of this, I mean, yeah, it's going to make your blood boil for sure. So the Conservatives under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper used prorogation to avoid a confidence vote in 2008, thwarting all three opposition parties in their attempt to defeat his government. Harper's government used the move again for 2 months in 2010, that time to kill a committee inquiry into the treatment of Afghan detainees. So Jean Chrétien's Liberal government was accused of using prorogation to avoid tabling a report on the sponsorship scandal in 2002-2003. Can anyone ask for prorogation? No. A Privy Council committee memo in 1935 said recommendations to the Crown concerning the convocation and dissolution of Parliament are the special prerogatives of the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister is the only person who can do this, and this is one of the powers that they have. And basically, as you can see, this has been used in the past, and the person that this goes to actually make that decision, you can see clearly that it is pretty undemocratic in the way it's been used in the past by opposition parties in exactly the same way. Obviously, Trudeau is much more hated than probably the parties back then, but still, it shows the cracks, and it shows that Canada, in reality, is not the democracy that people probably think and people probably respect it for, and is still being influenced by these power structures from outside. So anyway, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video, I'd highly recommend that you check out that video there. And if you're looking for a VPN and want to help protect your privacy whilst helping out the channel, get ExpressVPN, expressvpn.com/marketmania, or join us over on buymeacoffee.com/marketmania. I will see you in the next one. Take care.